Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are ESPN's chief writer Mark Ogden, the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the Back Pages. The Mail leads with Moyes is back. Scott makes emotional Everton return and signs deal until 2027. And on the FA Cup, Accrington Stanley fan David Lloyd Bumble is ready to rumble the Reds. Liverpool. Times also focuses on Accrington Stanley's magical FA Cup tie against Liverpool. It carries the news as well that Manchester City are set to sign Lens defender Abdulkadir Kusanov for £42 million. Telegraph has an interview with one of the class of 92 Salford owners, Paul Scholes, on their tie against Manchester City. Former United midfielder says, "I've never been so excited for a game I'm not playing in." And interesting that the Mirror splashes with David McDonald's take on Ruben Amorim and his fight to keep Mainoo at Manchester United. Also cover the news of David Moyes' return to Everton and Robbie Savage's criticism of Sean Dyche's sacking. OK, well, let's start with the Mail. The headline is Moyes is back. Scott makes emotional return, signs deal until 2027. Dominic King reporting that David Moyes has been charged with ushering in a new era at Bramley Moor Dock. Mark, what's your take on this? We love the drama of a comeback, but how often does it work?
Well, it worked for David Moyes at West Ham. He went back and won a trophy, so I suppose he's got that in his favour. But I do think that, you know, this isn't an appointment that will be universally welcomed by Everton fans. I think there are some that still think that David Moyes didn't take the club as far as they could. I think that's quite harsh. But we have to be honest that some Everton fans didn't bemoan his departure back in 2013. I do think that, you know, he's a good appointment for Everton. I think they're in a situation right now that are pointed above the relegation zone. They need to get out of that. They need to stay up this season, every season, but this season more important than ever in the sense that they have the new stadium they're going to move into at the start of next season. So, you know, Everton fans that aren't happy about David Moyes going back, they really probably need to remember that when he was there for, I think, 11 years, they were a team that regularly finished in the top 10, sometimes higher than that. You know, Champions League one year, which they unfortunately missed out on the actual group stage. But David Moyes had Everton competitive for a long time. That's why he got the Man United job. He was a manager that made his reputation there. So in the years since he left, Everton have been nothing like that, apart from the odd occasions Roberto Martinez, that Everton have disappointed. So, yes, David Moyes is a divisive figure amongst Everton fans, but I do think that it's a good appointment for the club. Short term, at least. Long term, maybe they may go in a different direction once they get into the new stadium and try to kick on. But right now, it's a good appointment.
John, it's made your paper as well. Sidebar of the back page of the Mirror. Moyes poised to seal Everton return. They say that it's a 2.5-year deal. And Moyes has been talks with owners, the Freaking Group, with hopes a deal can be struck in the next 24 hours. John, look at it from David Moyes' perspective. Do you think he's been convinced of the ambition of the owners, given that he's been talking recently about not wanting relegation battles?
Yeah, he was quoted last week, wasn't he, when he was talking about the New Year's honours. Basically, he said he doesn't really want to kind of go back to a club which is entrenched in a relegation scrap. But Teddy, what catches my eye about this story is that it's 2.5 years. It's up to 2027. I think that the fact is that, you know, David Moyes, I think, probably would have been reluctant to go back into some sort of relegation fighting, Red Adair kind of scrap, really, to just steer them away on a 6-month deal. I think what this says to me is that the Everton new ownership, the Freaking Group, basically believe that in him to give him a 2.5-year deal, not just to see them into the new stadium, if you like, but also to perhaps overhaul the squad and rebuild the squad. Listen, I think Sean Dyche did a really solid job. I think that Sean Dyche really, you know, I think perhaps gets underappreciated for the job, bearing in mind the circus behind the scenes. Let's be clear here. But you're in dangerous territory immediately when you're telling fans of a football club as passionate as Everton what they should think. So I do think, rather like with Mark, I think it's dangerous sort of kind of to tell Everton fans whether sort of kind of what a good job Moyes did last time. My perception is that I think he did a fantastic job last time. 11 years, got them into Europe, got them into the top four, got them in, you know, within a touching distance of a Champions League campaign. I think that overall he was absolutely sensational for that football club. He built up his reputation as one of the most consistent managers and best performers in the Premier League. And honestly, I do think that what they're hiring now is a guarantee of safety this season, and also someone that will be passionate about that football club to try and build for the future.
Indeed, on that note as well, the front story on the Telegraph Sport there, beneath the picture of Paul Scholes, is the headline regarding Moyes. Moyes returns to Everton with contract until 2027. Mike McGrath reporting, Mark, and he ends this first page here. The length of the contract suggests Moyes will be in charge of a rebuild of the squad. Though with the Friedkin group, when you look up, Roma seem to have a new manager every couple of months. How secure should David Moyes be, do you think, in this position?
Yeah, listen, we all know that a contract in football doesn't mean anything. He signed a 6-year contract at Manchester United and lasted 11 months, and that is the nature of football, that managers get contracts, and it's very rare that they see them through. But I think, to be fair to David Moyes, you wouldn't want to go there just for a 6-month contract. He didn't want to be a short-term guy. He wants the chance to, revive Everton, keep them up and take them into the new stadium. I think, he's a very proud man, David Moyes, and I think overall this is his club. I think it's the club that he kind of re-energised and took to a different level. Maybe he feels a little bit of unfinished business. He didn't win a trophy at Everton. They were always a club that just felt like they had a bit of a glass ceiling above them, and he couldn't quite punch through. And I think he's probably desperate to go back and change that. The squad he inherits will be a lot different from the one he left behind. I think Everton have certainly declined over the years, and it's going to be hard for him with that squad to do anything right now. But I think, he's 61, he's still got plenty of time on his side. And I think that if he is given the backing of the new owners, he can take Everton certainly back to being a top 10 team and competitive team. But it's such a competitive Premier League now that it's going to be hard. It's a long-term plan to get Everton back to where they used to be under David Moyes. Now, a 2.5-year contract, that's probably not long enough to do it. But if he sees that through and can get another contract, that's good for Everton, because one thing they lack, and they have lacked over the years, is stability. And if they can get some stability and some forward momentum under David Moyes, that's great for the club, who, are a real sleeping giant. The stadium's amazing on the banks of the Mersey. It really does, deserve a Premier League club. But if Everton go down, that'll be disastrous for them. So I think Moyes coming in is a good timing, and he can take them forward. But I think he does need a lot of backing from the owners.
John, what type of David Moyes will Everton get this time around? Of course, they got to the 2009 FA Cup final, haven't won a trophy, though, for 30 years. Do you think after Moyes' trophy at West Ham that they're getting a better bet for some silverware, maybe some glory in the next 2.5 years?
Yeah, I do think they're getting a better all-round manager. And managers say, they pride themselves, don't they, on never stop learning, basically. You grow and evolve. I think, dressing rooms have undoubtedly changed in sort of kind of David Moyes, 20 years plus sort of managerial career. So he's arguably had to move with the times. Listen, I think he did a brilliant job at West Ham, and frankly, having won that European trophy at West Ham, maybe that was the time to go rather than sort of kind of stay. And again, you're sort of into that territory, aren't you? About West Ham fans are so proud, and I quite like that, to be honest, that they have an identity and a way of playing that they want to play. And it's difficult sometimes to sort of kind of tell them what they should do and what they should sort of kind of expect. And I think David Moyes is, perhaps, shall we say, a more conservative manager. I think that the way he sets his teams up, it is sometimes, safety first, if you like. But I don't see there's anything wrong in that. The immediate priority, I think, has got to keep Everton in the Premier League, to make sure they go into that stadium. I think he's a better all-round manager now. I think he's more philosophical about it. I mean, he spoke so well, didn't he? He came across brilliantly, even sort of kind of, in his final season at West Ham. And I think he's sort of kind of won over and convinced a lot of sceptics, I think, down the years. And basically, I think he's a better all-round manager, and I think he's a really good coach. And I think he, once he gets his feet under the table, particularly, I think next season, we might see him kind of move through the gears a little bit more. I think for now, I think David Moyes is just going in there basically to keep him in the Premier League. But there's no doubt in my mind, Teddy, they are getting a better manager than actually the one they lost, sheerly because of experience, I think.
Yeah, a lot of experiences, particularly at West Ham. 2 games coming up for him, Mark, in the near term. Aston Villa on Wednesday at home, Tottenham at home on the Sunday after that, the 19th of January. What do you think that the remit is, Mark? Is it to establish whether he can bring in additions? What's the possibility of that? Or is the task going to be stay up with what you have? What's your read on Everton?
Listen, obviously the task is stay up, but I think David Moyes will have made sure that when he was speaking to the Friedkin group, that he would have had at least a couple of players coming in and maybe a couple going out. I mean, Everton have got some players that are out of contracts in the summer. People like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they might need to do some business there just to freshen up the squad. But they are a squad that needs a bit more quality. They haven't really got any goals. I think Armando Broja might be out for the season. Seems to have done his knee injury again against Peterborough on Thursday night. So he'll need reinforcements. 2 home games to start with. That is a good start. Only if he makes it a good start, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously, if they don't get positive results, then it's a bit of an upward curve for David Moyes. But, I do think that he is the right guy at the right time. He is kind of a cautious manager. At Everton right now, they need that kind of organisation and that stability. And if they're going to get 1-0 wins to the rest of the season, that'll keep them up. It's not about, champagne football. And I know the Everton fan base it's one of the most demanding fan bases in the Premier League. Despite the fact they haven't won a trophy for 30 years, they are a club that expects to win things. The fans expect to win things. And when you've got the shadow of the neighbours, Liverpool, winning things at the time, it makes it a very, very hard job. And maybe sometimes an unrealistic job. But David Moyes knows what the expectations are. And I think he will, certainly this season, if he gets a couple of players in, will meet the remit of keeping them up.
Welcome back. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to ESPN's senior writer Mark Ogden and the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross. Let's go to your paper, John, once again. That big headline with a picture of Mainoo. Ruben's fight for Cobby. David McDonnell reporting, John, that the clubs are aware the Red Devils would find it impossible to turn down a bid in the region of £70 million. What do you think? Surely one of the biggest clubs in the world should be able to turn down whatever they want, shouldn't they?
Well, they absolutely should be able to, but they can't because of PSR. I mean, PSR is weighed so heavily on the business that you do, particularly sales of academy products, simply because it's effectively pure profit, really, to balance the balance sheet, really. And honestly, I do think that is one of the most frustrating things about that set of rules, really, because what is the incentive then to produce an absolute gem like Mainoo, who was absolutely terrific last season, wasn't he? Great at the Euros. We wondered whether he'd go, and then he absolutely commanded a place, and then, started games and was absolutely fabulous. This season, maybe he hasn't quite hit the heights. Injury played a part. Maybe a little bit, fatigued after the summer. But he's, if he stays at United, which hopefully he still will, he'll be a gem at that club, in my view, for the next decade. And I think it's absolutely crazy that United find themselves in this position. I think it's crazy that a lot of clubs big clubs find themselves in the position that they sort of kind of almost got an auction off the family silver with the academy products. Honestly, they've got to look again at this because it's crazy. I get the point, and that Rashford probably comes into this as well. That basically they're sort of kind of having to look at homegrown players to balance the books, and then particularly if they want to do other business. But this is skewed and wrong, and I actually have sympathy for United, for Mainoo, and indeed Amorim, who clearly doesn't want to lose the player.
Often the homegrown players hurt the most, don't they, for the fans to lose, Mark? Back page of the Mail, Amorim, I don't want Mainoo sold. Chris Wheeler and Simon Jones on the story for the Mail. What's your suggestion, maybe, Mark, that Man United are using the PSR stuff potentially as a negotiating tool as well over the weekly salary of Mainoo? What's your read on what's happening?
I think there's definitely an element of that in terms of the negotiation there, but also trying to make the point to clubs across Europe that Man United aren't there to start throwing money around like they did maybe under Ed Woodward. I think it's a different time now, but I'm not sure that it works, to be honest. I think clubs know exactly what a club's got to spend and how much they can push it. And I think if United are trying to kind of change the narrative a bit, it's not going to work. I think the reality is that the thought of Mainoo leaving Man United, considering the 18 months he's had, is ridiculous. I agree with Crossy. It's just that the system doesn't really help, that it shouldn't be incentivising the development of young players for sale. It should be incentivising the development of young players to play, so that you can build your own team without spending lots of money to bring players in. So this system doesn't actually, look, it's an accountancy thing, obviously, and if that's how it works, that's how it works. But it's a loophole that needs closing, because a club should be producing its own talent for the benefit of that club, not financial benefit or the benefit of the owners. So if Mainoo was to leave, and I don't think he will, I think he'll sign a new contract, I think people like Marcus Rashford might leave, and that is when United can cash in on this PSR status. But still, it's wrong. It's wrong that players should be more saleable assets simply because they are homegrown players and because they're, from a balance sheet point of view, more valuable than somebody else.
Well, you mentioned Rashford. Let's talk about him quickly. On the front page of the Telegraph Sports Supplement, Mike McGrath and James Ducker with a story that Rashford's now on Monaco's list of top targets. Within the story, they also mention Mark Borussia Dortmund and AC Milan. Where do you think Rashford is going? Do you think he will leave before the end of the window?
I think there's a pretty good chance, but I think this is a bit of a reality check for Marcus Rashford as well. if he was expecting to get a big club in this window, well, obviously these are big clubs, but they're not elite clubs right now. They're not the top clubs in Europe. I mean, AC Milan, one of the greatest clubs in the world, but right now they're not. They're a Man United at the moment, whereby they're a club with a great past that's not punching its weight. Monaco again, would you want to go to the French league for a club that is not winning things in Ligue 1? Borussia Dortmund again. So Marcus Rashford is all of a sudden becoming a B-list player for B-list clubs, and that is probably not what he expected. And he probably would have thought he was going to go to Barcelona or PSG, but it's not happening. So Man United might be thinking, we're going to struggle to get rid of Marcus Rashford here because the clubs that are in for him haven't got the money to buy him, and they might not have the money to pay his wages. So it could drag on this situation with Rashford because the market isn't there. But I think we already knew that going into this window.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's a confusing market at times. A good one for loans, though, it seems, John, according to the Times, because City are to sign £42 million loans defender Abdul Qadir Kusanov for £42 million. But Peter Rutzler and Paul Hurst point out that he cost the Belarusian side £84,000, or cost Lens £84,000 in July 2023. What do we know about Kusanov? This is a pretty remarkable deal, this, isn't it?
What a profit! Yeah, signed from Belarus basically for that sort of money, and has gone through the roof. I mean, that's an astonishing, sort of uptake really. And listen, Lens have obviously had a sort of a good period of time where he's been able to shine really. But I mean, wow, what a signing! Listen, it's so obvious to me that Manchester City are going to try and use this window. He's not the only one being linked, is he? Sort of Omar Mamouche, basically linked from Frankfurt, a forward player who's been really prolific for Eintracht Frankfurt this season. So, and others besides as well. I think the time has come for Guardiola to do some overhauling. It's obvious that basically needs sort of strengthening, maybe some support, if you like, for Haaland. Strengthening at the back where they've looked particularly weak and vulnerable, particularly with injuries and ageing players. And I do think City, listen, if they get their recruitment right, and they get the right players in who sort of kind of fit the mould, it might give them a lift. And it's probably what everyone else in the sort of kind of battle for top four, if you like, are sort of are dreading right now, because they are that team that can go on this incredible winning run, and they do need an overhaul and new players. So they've certainly got the funds. If you think about the kind of their deals in recent times, they're not bound by PSR in any shape, manner, or form. They can do deals, and basically it looks as if they're going to use January to be very busy.
Yep, got some spare cash around. We're envious of that this time of year, aren't we, Mark? Let's talk Aston Villa and West Ham in the Telegraph. John Percy reporting on the FA Cup third-round tie. Villa coming from behind to hopefully spring, I guess, their dreams of winning the Cup for the first time since '57. But frustrating start for Potter as late collapse spoils night is the headline. Was it where perhaps we were ruining not having VAR, or would we have not even needed it? Because it was a corner, wasn't it, that led to the goal, but actually VAR wouldn't have intervened anyway. Yeah,
it's one of those situations where it was clearly wrong, but VAR couldn't have made any difference anyway. So, for people who haven't seen it, a Villa shot went out for a goal kick, and it was given as a corner when it didn't really go anywhere near a West Ham player. So West Ham have definitely got an argument there. But, for Graham Potter's point of view, it was a tough away game, tough start, Villa away in the FA Cup. But I think reality is that he might actually think that being out of the Cup has done him a favour, just reduces the workload, gets the players on the training pitch. They've got one objective now, and that's to stay in the Premier League. So I think in the long term, Graham Potter won't be too disappointed by the result tonight, because it gives him more time to work on what he has to do, which is keep West Ham in the Premier League.
A little headline in the sidebars of the eye there. Villa comeback knocks out Hammers in Potter's first game in charge. John, you're upset about the corner kick. I know. What was your takeaway regarding the job Potter has on his hands?
Yeah, I do think the corner's a farce, isn't it? The referee will actually feel embarrassed when he looks it back. He'll be basically, I think he'll be absolutely gutted, to be honest. Look, I think Potter's got a big job on his hands, frankly. I thought there were good signs in that first half. I did watch the game, and basically I thought that West Ham was sort of, fairly well organised. They seemed up for it. There's a bit of new manager bounce there, trying to sort of do things. I thought Paqueta, before he's kind of a little bit of histrionics and what have you, crept in basically. But I thought he was quite lively. Obviously scores. They're giving a sort of young left-sided defender sort of a chance here. So basically, it's a new start for a few of them. And I do think Potter is brought in partly because he plays a certain way and will try and bring attractive football. I think there's clearly enough talent Lopetegui was a disastrous appointment, completely underperformed, and basically just didn't live up to reputation, I'm afraid to say. There's clearly enough within that squad to be very clear and very safe. And I think Potter, if he can kind of move them into mid-table, which I think should be within his grasp, then actually I think he'll think, well, OK, if we have to forego the FA Cup run this year, so be it. The league and survival is his priority.
Yeah, great first half of Villa Park. Just fell apart at the end for West Ham. We'll watch how he gets on with interest. Let's talk FA Cup magic. Mark, who are they behind the scenes at Accrington Stanley? Has this captured your imagination, Accrington going to Liverpool?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is the tie of the round. I mean, it's just a shame it's not at Accrington in terms of the pure romance. But, you know, people that can remember the Milk advert will think, well, it's a classic kind of, you know, tying together a real story. But, I mean, that Milk advert actually put Accrington back on the map. They earned a little bit of money from it. And a club that went out of business in the 1960s, that they bounced back to the point where they regained Football League status in the early 2000s. And now they've got to Liverpool and they've got a team full of Scousers. The manager's an Everton season ticket holder. There's a real kind of FA Cup drama about this. And it would be fantastic if Accrington can get a result. I don't think they will, but just the fact that they're playing at Anfield, a lot of players there that would have, you know, dreamed of making it at Liverpool or even Everton across the way. I just think it's a great story, a great FA Cup tie. It's one that has definitely caught the imagination of lots of people. It
certainly has as well. Maybe not a result for Accrington backed, but perhaps this one is, John. What do you think? Guardian Sport front page, the Tamworth's team of bricklayers, van drivers and surveyors are ready to take on Tottenham in the FA Cup third round. We've got about 40 seconds, John. Could this be a spring and upset, the National League side?
Oh, I love it. This is what the FA Cup is about. And I love the FA Cup, in case you didn't know already. But basically, I absolutely adore it for these sort of ties. You know, it's the Giant Killers, the fifth-tier team hosting the Premier League big guns. That's the way round it should be. There's a few like that, as Mark rightly says, about Accrington, Liverpool the other way. Chelsea, Morecambe, spin that round. But this is the one where you have the sort of the chance. Yes, it's kind of a long shot. I love Postecoglou being defiant. My players, you know, they won't face a culture shock, but we will love it. It's the atmosphere, it's the romance, it's that non-league ground. Absolutely love it. Can't wait for this one.